This is pumping on 4505 basics. As I said to the last group, for me, looking at this pumping cabinet, I was kind of intimidated because there's so much electronics and different stuff going on all in one compact location. But it's actually the easiest pump of all of our engines to run. It goes on with the push of a button. And it does a lot of stuff on its own. There's only one kind of twist or trick to it, and that's highlighted here in a couple labels: pump on, idle, caps off, do not exceed max cap speed, turn off caps as soon as it comes on. So we're trying to give you a heads up about something, Chief is. And what that is when you turn the pump on, caps will automatically turn on as well, which is great if you want to start flowing caps right away. The problem is that CAFS has a limit on RPMs, and if you exceed that limit, it's going to burn out the CAFS motor or pump, and this alarm will start going off. We'll demonstrate that in a second. And if you're in that situation, you have to go back to idle to disengage CAFS. And if you're flowing water at the time, and when the people at the nozzle need water, and all of a sudden you have to go back to idle, they're not going to be happy that their water disappears. So we're trying to build the muscle memory here of turning this on and then turning CAFS off right away so we don't run into that problem. It's easier to turn it on down the road than it is to turn it off down the road. So as I said, this goes on with the press of a button. The Chief says that this is the only pump that Sunshine has where you can start it without any water in the pump, but because it's got like an auto prime function. But nevertheless, it likes to have tank to pump on. So first step is to turn on tank to pump, and then just press start. And you'll see that it's automatically recircing. So we've got the recirc open as well. So we're good to go here. You will have heard CAFS turn on. After I did that kind of extra noise there, you'll see that on this display it says CAFS on. Once the pump gets to an idle speed for a few seconds and it runs through its little boot up menu here, you can hit this button on the far left, the PTO button, and turn CAFS off. You'll hear CAFS disengage in a moment, and this will say here CAFS off. So now CAFS just turned off. We're good to go. We can run this throttle as high as we want. But I'm going to turn CAFS back on just for a second to show you what happens if you leave it on and you start cranking up the pressure because you need to, get water uphill, or you've got multiple hose lines. That's the CAFS alarm saying it's too high. You're going to hit idle, go back to idle, and only once it's back at idle will you be able to disengage CAFS. Now it's off again. And that's what you don't want to have happen while you're putting water on a fire. So that's the super basic level instruction on getting the pump running here. Once this pump is running, then it's just a matter of turning on, or opening the valves for the discharges that you want to use, and adjusting the throttle to get to the right pressure. So let me tell you about one other thing. So we've got two discharges, two 2.5-inch discharges here. We've got two cross lays that are set up typically with 1.5-inch structure hose, and we've got a bumper. Discharge with, I think it's 200 feet of 2.5-inch. So it's a lot of different ways to flow water out of here. And we have, so I'm going to get to the bumper cannon in a second, because there's also 3 discharges that require a kind of high pressure mechanism on top of the regular pump. And there's 3 things. One is the bumper cannon that Spencer mentioned. The other are the spray bars. We have left and right spray bars on this. And the third is the hose reel. All 3 of those require high pressure. Ground sprayers, turret, and hose reel. And this is the high pressure gauge. And the way that is operated is once you get the pump going, you hit the high pressure pump button, it's on off. So now the high pressure mechanism is engaged, and you'll be able to flow water out of the bumper con, the hose reels, or the spray bars. One other thing, and then I want to talk about the cabin in a second. I'll turn the high pressure pump off. You can flow foam on this as well as caps, depending on the discharge. Foam, like on our other engines, is a simple on-off button. You hit that foam button, you'll start flowing foam. You can adjust the mixture here. We flow foam out of the bumper gun, the hose reel, the front discharge, the cross lays, and this 2.5-inch discharge in the rear. There is one 2.5-inch discharge that's water only, if you need that for some reason. If you want to flow foam out of the bumper cannon or the hose reel, in addition to turning on foam here, you also, and hitting the high pressure pump here, you also need to hit the high pressure foam button here. So for those high pressure devices, it requires an additional pumping mechanism, and it requires an additional foam mechanism on top of what operates for the rest of the discharges. Does that make sense?
So high pressure and high pressure.
High pressure and high pressure foam if you're wanting to flow foam out of the bumper gun or the hose reel. The other thing that's cool about 05 is that almost everything that I just showed you can be operated out of the cabin as well. Like if you're sitting in the driver's seat or the engine boss seat, you can actually, all these same controls are there except for turning caps on and off. And I think also, I don't think you can adjust the throttle up there, but you can, if you're pulling up on a scene, you can get the pump going. If you want to pump and roll or use the spray bars, you can do that from in the cabin because you can get the pump going, hit high pressure, and then you'll be ready to go with the bumper gun or with the hose reel. And that's exactly what 4 Mile did when they pulled up on that car fire that was transitioning to a wildland fire. They pulled their Type 3 up, turned on the bumper cannon, and started spraying right away without ever getting out of the cab.
So in that scenario, though, what about like now?
Well, you're going to let it run, but you're not going to need to or be able to from the cab turn up the throttle, so you don't have to worry about that exceeding the cap's RPM threshold. Yeah, exactly. But if someone then got out and started tinkering around with the throttle, then you'd have that problem. You could potentially have that problem.